Mårten. I'm going to give a quick overview of my experience as a game developer focusing on the Japanese market, as well as my observation of the current climate in the Japanese indie scene. That wasn't supposed to happen at all. There we go. Who am I? Well, I'm a game developer, obviously. I have my company J&J Interactive, which I founded in 2011. I've since made 7 commercial games for various platforms, those listed there. And what is somewhat unique about my games is that Japan is the biggest market for me, which is fairly unusual for a Western developer. So the main question there is how did that come about? How did Japan become my biggest market? And there is a couple of factors that is to be considered when you create a game for the Japanese market. And is language. Every game, if you intend to release in Japan, has to be localized. They do not play games in English. Very few exceptions. But if you want to focus on basically any Asian market, have to localize it. Aesthetics, which is of course important for any game, is even more important in Japanese games. They dislike what they call a Western style games. What that is, I don't know. Never been able to get a clear answer either. It's just sometimes they can see a game it's like, that looks very Western. Sometimes like it, sometimes they don't. It's something to consider. Story-driven games is still like very successful. They're the biggest market. They like their stories. We do too, of course, but they even more so there. And other than that, it's the same as everywhere else. A good game is a good game. The same in Japan as well, obviously. So I'm giving it gonna give some background. This is it's called Starsky here. It's my first game. And when I released this in like 2012, I didn't focus on the Japanese market at all. It wasn't localized or anything. But quite soon I discovered that the majority of my downloads came from Japan. So started to investigate why, and not before long I was contacted by a Japanese publisher that focused on bringing Western games over there, where it was localized, which meant the sales went up even more. One of the few examples where it did actually have to be localized before they started playing it, which I think was got very little text in it. So yeah, this is my first game. Like I said, didn't focus on Japan at all, but successful anyway. This was my latest game I did, which I sort of targeted Japan. I don't know if that's obvious, but it happened. This didn't work at all. They didn't like it one bit. I actually I pitched my mobile catalog to an Android store in Japan, where I pitched this game and this game. And here's an actual quote from that publisher. So, well, there you go. This is Akihabara then, which is an area in Tokyo. So you can't be sure, even if, I thought I knew what they were looking for. I guess I didn't. There are a lot of factors to consider. That's my short experience. Anyway, I could go into lengthy detail about why I think the first one was successful and why this one wasn't. I think I actually have a fairly good idea, but that would take a long time to explain. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was at Bit Summit, which is a large, like an indie exhibition fair in Kyoto, where I think it's the 5th year it's running. It gives a pretty good overview of what is happening, like specifically in the indie scene. They have several fairs in Japan, of course, Tokyo Game Show being the biggest, but also the most commercial one, where all the major companies are present. This one was very focused on just indie scene, both from Japanese devs and from Western devs. And there was a fair amount of variation there, of course, on the games presented. The 2D, 3D, some installations. It was a game where you had a UFO. You went and tried to abduct people, like a physical UFO you had on a fishing pole. There was some VR, which is still happening there. But there are some things that did stuck out as being like more present than others. And it's retro, it's all about retro. It's still so popular. I mean, obviously it's popular here too, right? But even more so there. Visual novels. Everyone knows what a visual novel is. All right, good. Inherently a very Japanese genre. You do have them, of course, here, but they are still as popular as ever in Japan. And a word of advice, if anyone wants to make a visual novel and target Japan, it is very difficult to do. The aesthetic value has to be really high because you're competing with some really impressive stuff, and it's crazy expensive to localize. In general, localization to Asian languages is very expensive, which is something to consider if you're planning Asian as a market. And there are some things that were specifically not popular. Mobile is even more difficult there than it is here. They have, I mean, I think they play Candy Crush as well, but they have their own games as well. Puzzle and Dragons being the biggest, where they literally have giant stores just dedicated to that game. So that's what you would be competing with. And one thing that specifically asked when I was talking to a publisher there, like asking, okay, so if I want to pitch a game, any specific genre I should pitch or something, I said no, like most things worked. There is one though, like we don't want any more of that. So sick of Metroidvanias. There's too many Metroidvanias. Stop making Metroidvanias. That's what they told me anyway. And furthermore, it is all about the Switch in Japan. It is dominating the market completely. Everyone, I mean, literally everyone at Bit7 was porting to Switch, basically, except those who were working with Sony. But like at least 70-80% easily was doing Switch, and everyone there who wants a dev kit gets a dev kit, which explains it. But still, it's looking to be the ultimate indie console, really. So if you can develop for Switch, you should probably develop for Switch. It's actually very easy nowadays for the Wii U and previous. You, as a Western developer, weren't allowed to publish in Japan. That has changed now. If you get a dev kit, anyone can publish in any region. So that's something to consider. That's it. It's just a short overview. If anyone's interested in knowing more about the Japanese industry, there's a movie. It's available on Steam. It's called Branching Path, which is essentially Indie Game the Movie, but focusing on the Japanese market. It's very interesting. Or if anyone wants to talk to me about it some more, welcome to talk to me. If anyone wants some connections or contacts in Japan, also welcome to talk to me. And that's it. Thank you.